I think a rabbit hole is actually two things. One, it's a form of distraction or procrastination. We become very focused on something other than the task that we have to do. And two, a rabbit hole is a place where we get stuck because we can't kind of get ourselves out of a certain kind of ruminative thought process. Stress, self-care, putting other people's needs before mine, self-motivating, research, home improvements. Okay, fantastic. So when we talk about rabbit holes, before we talk about how we're going to solve and reduce them, what we want to do is take a step back, because we can't go into the forest until we really we can't go into the trees of the forest until I get a sense of the forest, right? So what are four types of focus? And this is important for us to know when we're thinking about this idea of a rabbit hole where you kind of fall into something and you can't climb out. Selecting. That's the first type of focus, choosing what you're going to focus on. And for people with ADHD, often, that thing feels like it's choosing you. You don't feel like you're choosing that thing. Second, it would be monitoring, noticing where your attention is and where your attention is not. That is a form of focus. Hyperfocusing, a complete absorption in a task to a point where a person appears to be completely ignore or tune everything else out, and sometimes to the to the harm of themselves. They're not eating, they're not drinking, they're not going to the bathroom. And then the final type of a focus is shifting, moving smoothly from one task to another. Focus is a dynamic process of choosing what is critical to notice or do or recall. And it's like a flashlight. It's like the spotlight of your attention. And one of the things that we can do to improve focus is to notice where it is. Most of us notice when we return from drifting off. Suddenly we will be shopping on Amazon and 30 minutes will have gone by. We don't know where it went to. Suddenly we can be working on a project and we find an article that's interesting, and then we're on a related topic, and then we find another article and another article, and then 2 hours have gone by where all we've done is read articles, but we haven't actually worked on our project. Okay, so we want to improve our focus by noticing where it is. So how are we going to cope when we return from that drift, when we poke our heads out of the rabbit hole and say, oh my gosh, I've been spending the last X amount of time doing this thing? So I think it's really important that when we notice that we're in a rabbit hole or we're hyper-focusing, that we are kind to ourselves, that we act with a matter-of-fact response rather than something that's judgmental. So instead of saying, oh my gosh, I can't believe I'm doing this again, what a loser I am, we want to gently bring ourselves back into the current moment. So I'm going to turn to some of these things, some of these comments that you're making about your rabbit holes, so I can respond to them. And I want to say that unfortunately, Facebook will delete things, so I will probably have missed many. If I don't get to what you want, please come back. Procrastination, we're going to be talking about that. Selecting is a challenge. So choosing what to focus on, and this is something that's a common struggle for many people with ADHD, because it's related to prioritizing, which is one of those key executive functioning skills, which is diminished when people feel overwhelmed. Because when we have to prioritize, we need to be able to separate things into what's urgent and important. Urgent are things that have time, they're time-related tasks. Important is more of a value-related task. And so for a lot of people with ADHD, it's hard to differentiate between what's urgent and what's important. And so everything becomes lumped into one bucket of crisis. right? And so we want to be able to start to identify and understand what isn't a crisis, but what is something that has a time deadline, so that moves up to the front of the line, and what's something that's important, but it's not due till next week, I can move that down the road. Someone said they enjoy hyperfocus. Mandy said, I can't focus worth a damn on reading textbooks, but I can focus on Facebook like it's my utter lifeline. Well, that's interesting. It describes my entire day. I feel seen. So one of the things that I think we want to say is that, when you have to read a textbook for a class, there might be something like theoretically you're interested in the class, but the book itself is not written in a way that engages you. The book itself is not particularly stimulating, and it's easier to engage in Facebook because there are all these changes that happen all the time. You're reading about people's posts and what they're doing, and you're seeing pictures, and when you're reading text, not so much. It can be a little bit more redundant and boring. So when we think about our trouble with focus, I think the first thing that we want to do is to notice, what are things that I like to focus on and why are they easy for me? So I'd like you to put in the chat, what are things that you like to focus on and why are they easy for you? And of course, the next question I'll ask is, what are things you don't like to focus on and why are they harder for you? But let's start with what you like to focus on and why it's easy for you, because there's information there that we can carry to the things you don't like, that we can adapt to the things that you don't like. Karen says, I telecommute sometimes and then think I can do a load of laundry quick, and I go do it, and 90 seconds later, I don't know what happened because Facebook moved it. Doing tasks is boring. Yes, you can see the video later. Prioritizing what to do. The 4 different types of focus. Yes, I will repeat those. Selecting, choosing what to focus on. Monitoring, noticing where your attention is and where it's not. Hyper-focusing, that complete absorption in a task to the point where everything else falls away and you tune it out. That's very different from flow. And shifting, moving smoothly from one task to another. Maria, I focus, oh my God, these are coming so fast. Maria, send it again. Laura, Cameron, reading because I don't think about my own problems. I'm swept into another world. Right, so it's interesting. Kathleen says interesting stories, music, reading for leisure. It's something that's enjoyable. So there's a gain for you when you do these things. And one of the things that we want to say is that part of reading a textbook, a boring part of a textbook for a class or something for work, is that the subject matter itself may not be engaging and there's no secondary gain for you. Like you can't sort of hold on to, okay, when I'm done reading this project, I'm going to go have lunch, or when I'm done reading this project, I'll be prepared for the meeting. That secondary gain isn't big enough. It's not a big enough incentive to pull you through. The video keeps cutting in and out. Shoot, I'm sorry. I'm not sure why that's happening. We are having storms here in Massachusetts, so I apologize. Cindy says learning new things is easy, right? Because it's interesting. You're stimulated. Writing reports about things I already know, blech, impossible. No, it's not that stimulating. It's not that interesting. It doesn't feel creative. Word games on my mobile phone mean I don't have to think about other things. The encounter assessment interaction is what I like to focus on, documenting it later. Okay, crafting. It's not like I don't choose to focus on something, but once I'm interested, it's like hyper-focus. Thank you, Michelle. Creative things that spark the imagination. Going to the beach, I hear on that one. Creative writing, posting poems, reading stuff about astronomy, theology, etc. gives me a buzz. So that's what I'm talking about. It's easier to focus when you have that buzz, okay? Painting and other hobbies. Crossword puzzles, the perfect ADHD hobby. I get to hyper-focus for 15 or 20 minutes and walk away. I love that because what I love about it is when the puzzle's finished, I've completed this, I'm done. I have enough self-restraint restraint to move on. That's fantastic. Podcasts, organizing things, British TV, love the mysteries, me too. Watching and building a space to attract different kinds of birds. It's calming and brings joy. Oh, that's fantastic. Starting a hobby, learning new things, nature. So now I'd like you to put in, somebody says, Elise, grad school is easier than undergrad because you want to learn about it. Yes, because it's in the field that you've chosen. Writing a business plan you like. Come over to help me sometime, Tom. I'd love that. Agnieszka says, I struggle in social situations with new people. Yep. Amanda McGuire, exactly. It's all about dopamine. Doing the spelling bee. Okay, unrealistic kinds of time. You get into a hobby, you really focus on it. Immediate feedback from others, connection. So all of these things feed your dopamine, right? It feeds the part of you that is motivated, that wants to do it, that actually can manage your focus more because you're getting something from it. So Catherine says, my issue is time management. So I try to allow extra time for everything so I don't stress, but sometimes my estimation of how much time I need is often too short. Oh, I hear you on this one. I think that's true for a lot of people with and without ADHD, but I know my issue is time management in that way, that I think I can do more in a given amount of time than is humanly possible. The buzz can distract from other things. So the buzz, Michelle, is a pro and a con. Eating dinner is a challenge for your son. If he's in the middle of eating something, what can I do to get him to eat his meal? Thank you for sharing that, RJ. That's not actually the focus of what we're talking about, but next week when we do parents, please join in again and I'll address that. Mosaic making. Okay, cleaning, gardening. All right, so now what I'd like you to do is I'd love you to put in areas where it's hard for you to focus and why you think that is. Liz, I love helping people do a little counseling, but sometimes I forget myself and become exhausted. I don't seem to have time to do things, and I feel guilty if I take time for me. You know, Liz, I think a lot of women have this issue, but if you don't care for yourself, then you can't care for others. You know, it's the, sort of the oxygen on the plane metaphor. You know, you put your mask on yourself first and then on someone else, because if you're not breathing, if you're not fed, if you're not nurtured, you actually really can't help people in the way you want. Joel, when I do something boring, my mind will also wander while my stimuli is stuck in, hold on, Joel, did I miss that? Yeah, okay. I have supplies for different hobbies, completing a task. Okay. Housework is boring. Okay, that's a tough thing. Documentation while working, boring. Something that's boring. Organizing my thoughts and tasks. Is it normal to goof up on dates, like missing a doctor's appointment? Yes, it is. Once the coffee is done, so goes the bird watching. Though that's a good, it's a good structure for you right there. I'm proud of you that you set that up for yourself. It's like, okay, bird watch for this cup of coffee. Memorizing, laundry and dishes, because you don't get anything from it. So I want to say something about housework, and at least this is a great thing that you brought up. Thank you so much. You don't get anything from it in the moment. Laundry, dishes, tidying, ideally having the house look clean and be tidy would be enough of a motivator, but that's not true for a lot of people, and if it's not true for you, that's okay. So what we want to do then is to set up an incentive for you. Once I do the laundry, I'm going to give myself this little bonus. I'm going to let myself walk the dog around the block. Once I do the dishes, I'm going to allow myself to watch my show, or I'm going to call my friend, or maybe I'll go back to that bird watching. So we want to set up external motivators to help us with that lack of internal motivation. Charlene says straightening and organizing at home. There's so much to do and I get overwhelmed. And that goes back to that urgent and important, that famous Eisenhower matrix. So there's so much to do that it's overwhelming and you need to break things down. I mean, I listen to a lot of people talk about motivation and procrastination, and the advice is pretty much consistently break it down, set up an external reward, break it down, set up a reward. The other thing you can do is to make the process of doing an unpleasant task more pleasant. And how you can do that? Listen to music, have a body double, share it with somebody else. So you want to try to do that. Any type of admin. Excel spreadsheets hurts my brain and I hyper clean, but then 2 days later the house is messy. So we want to set up some systems to maintain the cleanliness that you've accomplished without it kind of, devolving so quickly. Really hard to start reading my Bible. I can't understand it. Maybe it's just good enough to listen to pastors explain it if you don't enjoy reading it. Okay, let's talk some solutions. Someone said, let's talk solutions. All right, so if we're going to sort of head into talking solutions, then I want to talk a little bit about hyperfocus. So a hyperfocused brain, an ADHD brain, is completely absorbed in the task to the point of seemingly ignoring or tuning everything else out. When people describe hyperfocus, sometimes they talk about it as a dreamlike state where the outside world ceases to exist. Hyperfocus can prove helpful when you're able to channel its intense focus into difficult tasks, paying bills, completing homework, writing that report. You'll hyperfocus on it. The thing that's important about hyperfocus is if you know that you tend to hyperfocus on certain things, you have to use a timer. Because when you spend more than an hour or 2 hours on a task, your brain is working really hard and it's using up all the glucose, the energy that it has stored. And so once those glucose centers are depleted, what kicks in is cortisol or adrenaline. And so now you're essentially running on fumes. So hyperfocus for a period of time and figure out what's going to help you stop. Whether that's a timer, 3 timers, a phone call from a friend, and get up, walk away, and take a break for 30 minutes. Before you get up and leave, what you want to do is write yourself a note about what it is exactly you were working on and what you were thinking about so that you can then come back to it that way. Okay? Because that pressure actually will exhaust you over time. All right? So one of the problems that people have with getting out of hyperfocus is that whatever the task is that's after that, and this would be true for anything that actually pulls you into that rabbit hole, whether it's shopping on Amazon or, spending time on Instagram or any social media or anything like that, is that whatever seems next isn't as compelling. It's not as engaging for you. And so your brain, it's supercharged, energized, maybe it's depleted after a hyperfocus. It's hard to shift because the lure of that dopamine is very strong. So how do we transition from a hyperfocused, high dopamine reward activity to a lower dopamine activity? What it requires is impulse control, emotional regulation, and metacognition. Impulse control. You've set up a structure for you to stop. You actually stop. Metacognition. You're aware of yourself. You click in and realize I haven't gotten up from my chair in 2 hours. You're aware that you've been really zoned in here. Your timer helps you do that. The tomato timer is a great thing for this. And you pay attention to what's happening around you as well as what's happening in you. Like, whoa, I really need some water. I haven't had a drink in 4 hours. Another way that you want to transition is emotional regulation. This is part of this. These all work together: impulse control, emotional regulation, and metacognitive awareness. Because what happens is your emotions are like, I want more pleasure. I want more pleasure. This feels good. More, more, more. And what's happening is your metacognitive brain is saying, hey, you know what? I know this feels good, but continuing to do it actually isn't the right choice now. okay? It's not healthy for me. I have to take a break. And that is where the impulse control kicks in. So all of these things work together, and it's challenging, right? Because these skills do not come naturally to people with ADHD brains. And so we have to start by creating some kind of schedule and following it, and setting some time restrictions and using alerts on your screen or your phone that will let you know it's time to transition. Having some phrases you can say to yourself when it's time to transition. Okay, this is really fun. I've now spent a lot of time on TikTok. I've spent more time than I should have. It was supposed to be 30 minutes. I ignored my timer. Now it's been an hour. My second timer's gone off. Actually, I need to listen to this. I need to listen to this because I do have things I want to do, because I'm suddenly, tuning in, and my awareness is telling me, wow, you know what, I really have stuff to do. There's also there are also apps that you can get that kind of float across your screen to kind of help you come back to focus. So having that awareness that you are actually not paying attention to the thing that you'd like to be paying attention to is a very important first step. And it has to be non-judgmental, right? It's like, oh, okay, I've drifted. Oops, that was 30 minutes that I wasted, or I spent ineffectively. I prefer that language, but we'll say wasted because that's probably what you say to yourself. I need to regroup and try again. So articulating what the transition is to the next thing, when you name that activity that you're shifting to, helps you actually go to it, okay? So I'm going to the thing that I want to. I'm going to stop. I'm going to put my TikTok down, and instead I'm going to stand up and I'm going to walk my dog around the block because he hasn't been out in 3 hours. And when I come back, I'm leaving myself a note of cleaning the kitchen with loud music so I can dance at the same time. So we have to really think about things, external motivators that help us. Listening to a podcast could be that. I know for me, when I have a stack of dishes, I'm going to be completely honest, I put on, music from the 1970s, disco music, and I'm discoing around my kitchen, while I am cleaning up. Sometimes I might put on, Lizzo very loudly, and my husband will be in another part of the house and he'll come down. He's like, it's so loud. I'm like, leave the kitchen, please. I'm doing my thing. You wanted it needs to be cleaned. You asked me to take care of it. I'm taking care of it my way, right? So that's important to know, what's going to help you really juice up and get it done. Let's see, we have some comments here. I wish I could turn on hyperfocus. It's not something that happens often. Some people don't really hyperfocus, and that's okay. Some people, it's a lifesaver. And if you don't hyperfocus, then I think what you want to do is use that tomato time or the Pomodoro method and work in chunks where you can focus on something for 20 minutes, then take a step back. Focus on something for 20 minutes, take a little break. That will help you feel like you're making progress and not worry that you're not hyper-focusing. Maybe 20 minutes is too long of an ask and it needs to be shorter. Let's see, one in the doom box. I like that. I try to focus on that, how proud I'll be of myself when I finish working out, for example. Exactly, Angie. Impulse control so hard. It is really hard. It is really hard, particularly if you're in a high dopamine activity. It's very difficult. Sheila, a solution to my problem, writing 3 serious letters, is going to the library and only 1 letter a day. Love that. Okay, 1 letter a day makes good sense. Bob, you've been trying to play the ukulele for 10 years. Start really small. 5-minute lessons on YouTube. What is a good amount of time to hyperfocus? 30 minutes, an hour? I think that's a good question, Kathleen, and it depends on you. So everybody has a length of time in which they can focus, and then they start to feel like I don't know if this happens to you, but I start to feel like I'm a little bit lost. Like I'm drowning a little bit. I'm actually not concentrating as well. And I would say for me that's somewhere around 90 90 minutes at maximum, and then I actually need to take a break. So I set my timer for 60 minutes, check in, see how I'm doing. Yep, I got another 30 in me. Do that, and then I make myself stop at 90 minutes. And that is the hardest thing to do, because there's a huge part of me that just wants to keep going, right? If I keep going, I'm going to finish. If I keep going, I'm going to finish. But actually what happens is if you don't take that break, you actually slow down in your productivity. And you're not thinking as clearly. Your brain needs to go outside and get fresh air, needs to eat lunch, it needs those things. Luana, for you, an hour. If you take a break, you might get anxious to get back to it. That's fine, then you can take a shorter break. My time limits for Facebook just kicked me off this talk. That's very funny, Heather. What do you do if you have really poor self-impulse control? So I think for people who really struggle with impulse control, having a body double or a partner can be very helpful. So someone you're like, hey, let's work for this amount of time and then check in. Because I think that there's a kind of accountability and a comfort in doing this with someone else. You know, maybe you can work, you will have a buddy from your job, and you're both working at home, and you say, hey, can we just work together? Can we parallel work? I call it parallel play, for an hour, because I find that I'm more productive if I say in the beginning of the hour to you what I'm going to do, and then at the end of the hour I can say how it went. Details can be grinding. Bob, I own 3 ukuleles, and every book I've taken one-on-one lessons and online courses, but still can't play it. Oh, that sounds frustrating. I agree with all these things that need to happen, but it's so hard to control emotions, impulses, and be mindful in the moment. Yes. This is especially true for me because I work in an animal hospital. Right, and so the thing that we have to do, and you know, we can talk about this in another Facebook Live later, is practice some mindfulness. So you practice mindfulness when you're not in the middle of your animal hospital. So you take 5 minutes in the morning and do a headspace or something kind of a meditation, insight timer, and then that will help you when you're in the middle of something that's crazy, you know, all around you, to stop and pause and breathe and say, wow, what's going on? What do I really need here to ground myself? Okay. Disco. Thank you, Deborah. Staying alive. You got it, Susan. I can't get past the guilt of wasting time to transition or take a break. I feel like I've already had a break in my rabbit hole. Okay, so the thing is, the guilt is telling you something. And is it the guilt or is it the shame? Because guilt says, hey, you know what? I'm a good person, but I made a mistake. Shame says you're a bad person because you made this mistake. And what I find for a lot of people I work with ADHD is that it's shame. Oh my God, I'm so embarrassed. I spent all this time, blah, 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 and I've wasted it, and now I don't deserve a break. And the thing is, if you've spent time down a rabbit hole, you do need a break, because you actually need to transition to something that is on your to-do list or more meaningful than the thing you were doing down the rabbit hole, that's actually more productive, helping you perform the way you would like to. Household personal training app is a godsend. Great. Pomodoro method, yes. And there's another one called Stay on Task, and this one you can set to like go across your computer screen. It's really great. You write a list of completed tasks next to the to-do list. That's very helpful. I found this thing on my phone, which I actually use. It's called To Do. It's an app, and what I love about it is you can have different categories. So I have a home list, I have a work list, and then I put the things down so I don't have to carry them around in my head and feel worried that I'm going to forget. And then when I do them, I check it, and it draws a line magically for me and moves it to the completed section. I find that very satisfying, actually. Thank you, Attitude, for posting that. So I want to take a little bit of time. I'll say a few more things. I like the visual crossing off the to-dos to I've to done. I love that. That is absolutely fantastic. To done. I'm going to think about that. I think that's great. I do that too. Definitely need the self-love aspect to give myself permission to really rest. Yep. I read too many books at one time. Can you become exhausted when you read a lot, like your body? Yeah, I mean, I think part of when you're reading a lot of books at one time is you're sort of lethargic and you're not giving yourself that time to integrate. So remember, think about this for a second. Let's say you're working on something or you're reading something or and you decide, oh, you know what? Oh my God, I got to take a shower. I'm going out to dinner with my friends. And you put the thing down with a little note of where you were so you can come back to it. You go up into the shower and you're taking your shower and, you know, you want blah, blah, blah. And while you're in the shower, you have this incredible idea. Why? Because you've given your brain some space to process and integrate all of the things that you were thinking about before. That is important. That's why actually having a wandering brain time is so critical for all of us. Time where our brain gets to just be and process and integrate. Really, really helpful. And I think I've recently spoken about multitasking. We can do that again. And multitasking, it can be a real problem for focus as well. I mean, it's one thing to do something that doesn't require much thought, like folding the laundry and watching television, but it's something completely different when you're talking on the phone and cooking, when you're driving and holding a meeting. These things, each of those requires much more full attention than you're giving it, and that can be very exhausting for the brain. Or when you're on a screen working on a project or homework or whatever, and you keep switching to other screens to check your email and check your Facebook. That's exhausting too, because the brain needs time to recover. So one thing that I'd like to talk about in this rabbit hole, you know, and I know there are so many comments that I can't get to, and I love this idea, Eileen, which is go to full screen if the scrolling is distracting you. I think that's great, but I don't know if you're talking about that here, but I do think that when people work in full screen, it's a lot harder to switch tabs onto something else. How do you get a buddy for this? I can't think of anyone I could do that with. You know, there are a lot of people in the ADHD community. So if you maybe if you participate in a group or something, if you're part of ADA or CHAD, you could try to see if there's someone who would work with you. If you still are struggling for a buddy, maybe see if someone on Facebook, one of your friends, might want to do it with you. I want to get into the last part of my talk today, and Sarah's mentioned this, extremely low self-esteem with ADHD and dyslexia. And Mandy says definitely shame. You have all the schoolwork and you're screwing around, you're going to fail this class, if you don't get your butt in gear, what's the matter with you? Everyone else can do it. My inner voice is a real biatch sometimes, LOL. You know what? It's not just your inner voice. I think everybody has that inner voice who's neurodivergent particularly, and it can be really, really cruel. I want to say something about that inner voice because we're talking a lot about hyperfocus and focus, and there's something about this that I think is related to something that we haven't discussed yet, and that's imposter syndrome. I think that when people struggle with focus, they may also struggle with imposter syndrome. Why? Because if you're not sure that you can control where your mind is going to go when and how long you can focus, you may feel like you're a fraud. Because what people think about you or how they see you may challenge how you would like to be seen and may challenge how you see yourself. Let me explain. So for example, when people carry that sack of shame around, and we all have one, and it's invisible, and it's from all the things that have happened in our life and the things people have said and things where we've stumbled. There's a way in which we second guess ourselves. We worry about what someone's going to discover the real you, the incompetent or foolish or irresponsible one. And it's hard to dismiss these thoughts because they can be deeply ingrained in your wiring. It's almost counterintuitive. So what happens is that we want to do better, we try to do better, and if we actually do the things in the way that we would like, and someone notices and gives it back and tells us, we dismiss it because we don't think we deserve it. So I'd like to ask you, what might fuel your imposter syndrome? What is that voice telling you that's wrong with you because you can't focus? Because this actually is going to sabotage your efforts to do things differently, right? And maybe imposter syndrome isn't quite the right word, but I think, what we're talking about is how other people may see us, how we want to present ourselves when we do succeed in producing the kind of work we want to, in spite of some of our focus challenges, and then not taking it in. So if that happens, I would love to hear for you what that's like. Public speaking. Someone said they had a dunce hat put on them. I'm really sorry. So we want to reduce that feeling that you're an imposter, okay? Because by paying more attention to things that go well in your life, things that you enjoy, and things that you are good at. So either share 3 good things with your partner at dinner, or write them in a journal for yourself, because we have to shift from, I've wasted my time, I'm messing up, I can't focus, I hyperfocus, I'm not productive, I don't get things done, to noticing when things are actually moving in a productive, effective direction. So is this about shifting your perspective from what's wrong or the ways that you're not enough to celebrating what's positive? Because I think that feeling like you're not quite good enough, and that people will see, people may think that you're doing a good job, but inside that that's not the case. So this harsh inner critic is what gets in the way. And Barbara, you're I really love this when you say harsh inner critic, remind myself progress, not perfection. Exactly. Hold on, I want to go up because someone said something that I want to see. Mandy, every night I tell myself tomorrow's going to be a good day. I'm going to do Y, X, Y, and Z. I'm going to get it done. And then the next day it all goes to crap, and I feel like I failed again, and I'm a bigger imposter because I can't do all the things I wanted, because of course I can't do it. Probably because no one could do it, Mandy. Okay? And mistakes are part of the learning process. That's right, Susan. And that's how we're wired. We may make a mistake and we grow. Heather, it helps when people we admire share their mistakes. It can help remind me that everyone messes up sometimes. Heather, anytime. I have plenty of mistakes I can share with you. Anytime. If I'm someone you admire, I'd be happy to share them with you. A gratitude journal and putting gratitude for yourself. Absolutely, Tina. That's so important. Let's see. Definitely benefit from a positive mindset. I liked the suggestion someone said to start a Facebook group for body doubling. That's a great idea. And Bethy Dawn says, my work self and my home self feel like 2 totally different people. In what way, Bethy? I'd like to hear more about that. Fight, flight, and freeze when presented with overload stimulation. Thank you for saying that, Chrissy, because I think that's actually what happens to a lot of people, is you're like a deer in the headlights. Like, there's so much to do. I'm overloaded. And when you stop in those moments, the best thing to do to slow down that fight, flight, freeze, that amygdala takeover, is actually breathing. And you can do triangle breathing, you can do belly breathing, you can do alternate nostril breathing, something where you are breathing in, holding, and then breathe out slower than the amount of time it took you to breathe in. That's how you lower the stress in your system. Okay, So when you hyper focus on a project, do good, takes so much out of you, and people want you to repeat. Right, and so that's an interesting point, Kathleen, that you get into this cycle where you're sort of like, I'm expected to perform at this level, and this level takes it out of me, so I can't. And so it would be great to be able to, differentiate which projects are you willing to perform at that level and which are you not, and to work with people on your team or your boss and explain, like, I can't, I have to hyper focus on these projects. I can't do that every time. It's not possible, and that's reasonable. I suffer, Martin says, from being able to do 8 hours of work and 2 hours of work. I find this often leads to distraction, but sometimes it backfires. Well, Martin, bravo. I'm glad you are so competent, actually, and really effective. And I think if you can do 8 hours of work in 2 hours of work, good for you. Plan your day accordingly. I'm going to do my first 4 hours from 9 to 10:30 in the morning. Then I'm going to take a break, and then after lunch I'm going to do the rest of my 4 hours from 1 to 2:30 or something like that. One thing I struggle with is always thinking, like, my brain doesn't stop. I come up with ideas and I start researching the idea. Some ideas are great, but I don't bring them to fruition. So that's really, this would be a great topic, I think, for us, Annie, to talk about here, which is how do we take something from the idea form and actually actualize it, make it real, bring it to fruition. I think that's a challenge for a lot of people with ADHD, so thank you for sharing that. Laura, when I was younger, I was so messy. So many people, so other children would say you're messy instead of saying I was dyslexic, and it made me feel stupid. Right. And that stupidity kind of feeds that imposter syndrome. Like, I really must be messed up because I can't focus and I procrastinate. And even if someone notices that I'm doing a good job, underneath I have all these things I can say to myself to disprove it. That's what imposter syndrome is, right? Someone pays attention and says, great job, and inside you're thinking, no, not really. You have no idea how hard it was for me to do this, and it's not really that good, and let me tell you why, and blah blah blah. Thank you, Nancy, for saying Ada has body double sessions. Yes, Ada is a great source for all adults, for adults with ADHD. It has all kinds of resources. I made the list last night. I had the motivation, and then the 2-year-old would not leave me alone for my shower, and everything went to crap. I hear you. That happens. Okay, great, Sophia. Thank you for putting that up. I really appreciate that. Body doubling is when you have someone with you, Jenny, who's doing something similar to what you're doing in the same space. So it's not like, the improvisational, pantomiming. It's actually having a body doing something as you are. That's the doubling part in a similar space. Ada is, oh boy, I think it's, I can't tell you right now. I think it's adults with ADHD. I'm sorry, I don't know. This is so embarrassing for those of you watching on YouTube later, considering I'm a member of it. So I'm going to look it up right now so I can tell you what it is. It is Attention Deficit Disorder Association. Phew. Okay. Karen, I worry that my job is going to find out I don't get things done and make mistakes because my attention is scattered. I think that, this is another conversation that would be good to have, is how and when and where do you actually talk to the people you work with about some of your neurodivergent challenges, so that they understand and accept you, not necessarily to use it as an excuse, but to accommodate your needs in certain ways. Katie, I'm so worried about failure and so self-conscious about keep making mistakes and feel like more of one, so it's like a self-fulfilling prophecy. Right, and then it's very hard to sort of rebound from that. So I think it's really important to take the time at the end of each day and write those 3 things that went well that day, so that you start to notice, you can look back and say, oh, okay, yeah, lunch was good that day. Or, you know what, I turned in my report on time, or I really helped a patient at the hospital. I feel good about that. Emily, I'm currently procrastinating studying for my math Alex placement exam. I'm so scared to fail. Take a deep breath. You're going to do the best you can, retain what you've got, and if you fail, which I don't think you will, unless, you may have to take it again. That's okay. That's okay. Thank you, Nancy, for the Revel app also. How much of imposter syndrome is also linked to a need for peer approval? I think it's pretty significantly linked, Martin, actually. You're asking some excellent questions. I think it's pretty significantly linked because there's a fundamental sense of I'm deficient at my core, and that sense of deficiency is actually what emerges in social anxiety, a core sense of self-esteem, of feeling good about yourself, and so this belief that you're deficient in some way is fundamentally related to imposter syndrome.